Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I want to talk to you for a bit about the Pathless. This is an open world puzzle platformer with a twinge of combat, just a little twinge of it. And I'd like to tell you about that, but I will in a moment, because I want to tell you something else I was a little bit surprised by, and that is the fact that this is an iOS game, alongside being a computer, a PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 game. So I thought that was kind of neat. And I've been playing this for about 3 hours at this point, and according to some of the reviews I've read, I'm at about the halfway point, although I could stretch it out a bit longer for going for some more of the optional tasks, but I think I'm at a good place to talk about the game right now. So, I said before that the game is an open world puzzle platformer. The open world is actually quite simple. A big stretched range with a bunch of things dotted around the map that you need to go to, and there is a very clear goal to do. And you're able to find things in the world by holding the L1 button, and that brings up your spirit mask. And your spirit mask will show you all the places on the map that you haven't been to yet, so that you can go straight to them. It's pretty simple, and if it wasn't for the fact that there was a really nice movement mechanic going on here, I probably would have lost interest in the game a fair bit shorter than I did right now. But yes, the movement mechanics in this game are great. So, you're a lady, you have a bow and arrow, and you have hundreds of these talismans around the place. You also have a limited stamina meter. So when you hold the L2 button to dash, you use this limited stamina meter. However, if you successfully shoot a talisman, you will refill some of your stamina, and you can just dash along forever if you keep shooting these talismans with your arrows. But the thing is, this game's bow and arrow doesn't actually require any aiming. It'll automatically lock on to whatever the most relevant target is nearby. So if you're currently having a bit of a dash through an open grassland, you'll probably be focused on the nearest talisman. If you're working on a puzzle, you'll be focused on the nearest interactive area. But I gotta say, when you're running along at freaking 200 miles an hour, shooting the hell out of these talismans and getting these huge speed boosts, not to mention being able to jump in the air and shoot a bow and arrow at a talisman, only for it to give you a mid-air boost, so that you can just keep going in the air for a while and just continue on at a ridiculous pace, is actually really satisfying. And there's a reason why I'm a little bit disappointed this game doesn't have more combat than it does. Notably, the game does not aim the bow for you. So you would think this would be hard, but it's all based on time. Well, you think this would be easy, I should say. But it's all based on timing. So you hold the button down and it charges up the meter, and you fire away when you get the timing right. And getting into this really satisfying rhythm of dashing and just knowing exactly when to fire off those arrows makes just moving around the world really smooth, really slick, and really fun to do. And it makes exploration easy because you can just zoom over to the next thing without really thinking about it too hard. So, you've also got a falcon friend who you rescue at the very beginning of the game, and this falcon friend can flap you around and glide for you. And by flap, I mean it flaps its wings and you get a fair bit of extra height. And one of the two major things that you need to do in this game is get gems to give you more flaps, and you get light stones, which help you progress the story. So, here's the drill. Light stones are usually locked behind a big and obvious puzzle. And these puzzles are very simple. They're usually something along the lines of, shoot arrows through fire to light more torches and unlock the thing. Or shoot an arrow at a target in order to change what it shows on the thing, and then when they're all right, you unlock a thing. Or get the pattern right. Or find these things that you can get your falcon to pick up, drop it on these switches, and then shoot the thing at the right time. And they just slowly get more and more complex, but they just don't seem to add that much in the way of mechanics as you go. They've added like one mechanic in my playtime, I think, and that is the mirrors, but otherwise it's just more complex tellings of the same mechanics. And there's no real way for the thing to be like, subversive. There's no real way for these mechanics to work in a way that you didn't expect them to. They work in the same way every time, to the point where once you see a puzzle in all its pieces, it's really easy to figure out what you need to do and in what order you need to do it in. And they usually make it the longest way around possible. So these puzzles are not particularly difficult. I haven't run into a problem with a single puzzle that I've run into. I'm more impressed by the side challenges that they have, which are things that get you more gems. And these gems not only serving as a reason to not die because you drop the ones that you haven't banked into a new level yet, but they also serve as the thing to help you get more flaps. And the challenges for them are usually a bit more satisfying to do. Like, there's a couple that I've run into which are about staying in the air while using your bow and arrow to shoot at the talismans in order to get the aerial boost and, like, get across a gap, just as an example. Or using the talismans to speedily run along the ground to disturb flocks of butterflies so that you can get the gems from them. And finding them in the open world, which is a lot harder than you might think, because sometimes they're behind the spirit mask. Sometimes you need to find another way to do a puzzle that you've already solved. Sometimes you need to just be really, really good on the lookout, because they can be really difficult to find. They might be hidden behind like 3 different walls or something along those lines. They're more interesting, which is a shame, because it eventually just starts to get a bit samey after a while when you're solving these puzzles. They always have a new situation. You don't find the same puzzles repeated, as far as I can tell. But at the same time, you just find yourself wondering, is there more to it than this? And through the first 3 bosses at the very least, it's usually just, as I said, more complicated versions of the same puzzles. However, there is definitely some level of threat going on. Now, I will point out that it is basically impossible to die. Like, I've had a fair few fuck-ups on my way through the first 3 bosses, and they have managed to hurt me, but they haven't managed to kill me. I don't know if that's just me managing to avoid death by the skin of my teeth, or the game just not wanting to outright kill you. But anyway, we'll move on from that. So, while you're wandering around the open world, finding new areas, solving puzzles, and actually learning bits about the story, because there are corpses and walls littered around the place that fill in a little bit of the background to the game's spiritual sort of world and lore, you'll see this gigantic red circle of death haunting your field of vision most of the time. And this gigantic red circle of death holds the monster. And if you end up in this circle, because the circle does move, it's not something that just stands still, you'll find yourself in a stealth challenge. As long as the light isn't on you, you can move, and you need to get back to your falcon in order to clear the way without getting the shit kicked out of you and losing a bunch of your gems in the process. It can be kind of annoying, because it's kind of bullshit what light detects you and what doesn't, but it still works as a great teaser for what the enemy bosses are capable of, and it is pretty easy to just outright avoid the area if you don't want to be anywhere near there, because the circle will usually move along inside of 5 minutes. But the whole idea of the game is solving those puzzles that we did earlier, taking the light stones from them and putting them in 3 towers. These 3 towers will shine light down on the storm, and it will make the monster vulnerable. So you can head straight on into the boss fight and defeat it. However, it takes a fair bit of effort, and the absolute best part of the game, and probably what most of the advertisement is for this game, because I can't imagine them advertising the puzzles most of all, is the boss fights. So when you drop into the storm, the monster knows it's vulnerable and it'll be running the fuck away, and you gotta catch up with it in this absolutely gorgeous entire forest on fire with giant monsters slinging fireballs at you, chase through the forest where you have to be constantly hitting those shots in order to keep up with the monster, because they're quick. You need to be hitting those talismans for those speed boosts as much as possible, and they can hit you and knock you off course and set you back a fair bit. But once you catch up to them, you fire off your arrows into their body, and eventually they'll just be like, fuck this, I'm taking this girl down myself, and you'll be teleported to a boss arena. And the boss arena is usually a preset set of challenges that you do, which involve dodging out of the way of the monster's attacks. Sometimes there'll be a couple of set pieces, but eventually you'll get the option to just throw the poor falcon right in its face, giving it just basically the light punch from hell, and it'll go down, and you'll unlock the next area. But the boss fights are really fun. They are absolutely the best part of the game, especially the chase, because the music starts to swell up, and everything starts to feel that bit more epic when you can't really see where you're going. It's just you and the monster in this duel to the death, and it is a very impressively presented scene. The entire game looks great, like, don't get me wrong. especially at the very end of this video where you'll get to see the boss being defeated and the environment around the place slowly going from dark and dank to bright and very colorful and very nice to look at. They are absolutely great at doing the graphical style of things around here, although I do wish that the environmental style of things changed a little bit more as you proceeded up to the different areas, because there's like 5 of them. I've seen 3 of them, and outside of the fact that some of them have some trees and some of them don't, they look almost exactly the same. But it's still a really nice looking game. There is absolutely no denying that. And as I said before, that music, when it swells up and it's doing a really good job at putting you in the moment, making you feel like you really are going to beat the absolute bejesus out of this monster, that's where the game's at its best. And it's why I'm so disappointed that there's no extra combat. Because you'd think to yourself, this is absolutely perfect. Based on position, and just why not just have some minor mobs or some mini bosses or something around the place to take out for some light stones, because it seems like it'd be absolutely perfect for this kind of movement and shooting scheme, because it's just so satisfying. So at the end of the day, I find myself in 2 worlds because of the game. It's fun to get around the open world. The puzzles aren't difficult, but they are at least not bad to solve. And when it runs up to it, the boss fights are absolutely gorgeous and a hell of a lot of fun to get through, especially in the chase sequence. But there's no way near enough of that stuff. It's always like 45 minutes of exploring the open world, doing puzzles and finding gems and light stones, versus 15 minutes of fighting bosses. And that's disappointing to me. So, can I recommend the Pathless? Not to everyone. I'm not going to say that I didn't have fun with it, because I absolutely did, especially with those boss fights. It's just, considering that you might see like the 15 minutes at the end of this video and think this game is fucking awesome, only to realize that, oh, you have to go through 45 minutes or what was at the very beginning of this video. If that sort of proposition doesn't appeal to you, I would recommend skipping it, because those puzzles are a major part of the game, and just pretending they don't exist and going for the boss fights is going to make some people miserable. But for the people who are enjoying what they're seeing on screen right now, as of this commentary about the 12-minute mark, where I'm going around solving puzzles using simple objects and just exploring the world at my own leisure, and then they get to the end of the gameplay and think to themselves, this boss fight looks freaking sick. So if you find yourself able to enjoy everything about it, I would wholeheartedly recommend it. Although the price is a little bit of a stickler factor, because as you might not know, on Apple Arcade, you can only buy this game on Apple Arcade on iOS for some reason. I don't know why, but it's $5 a month there. Meanwhile, the full PlayStation 5 version is $39.99. I do not know if you can get games separately from Apple Arcade, because I don't have an iDevice, so I can't go look, and I can't find any details on how much the Pathless costs on iOS in any way, shape, or form. So, okay. So to sum it all up, the Pathless is great when it's in the middle of combat, or when you're just exploring the open world, but the puzzles could do with a little bit of a kick up the arse just to make them a little bit more exciting or a little bit more interesting. I wish there was more combat, and as a full price $40 game, I'm not sure that I could outright recommend it. If you are enjoying what you are seeing so far in this footage, I guess I would say, yeah, go for it. You'll enjoy this and you'll absolutely love the boss fights at the end of the day. But if you are not enjoying what you're seeing in the first 15 minutes, I'd recommend just not seeking this out at all, because I doubt you will enjoy it. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.